What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Curious World of I, where I'm sharing my experiences and self-discovery journey with others through spirituality, mindset, travel, and much more. So I just want to go ahead and welcome myself back to my own YouTube channel because it's definitely been a while since I have done a video like this, and I feel like I'm repetitively saying that every time I hop onto YouTube, but I definitely wanted to come back to YouTube because over the past couple of months I have definitely realized how much I miss doing this, how much I miss making YouTube videos, just sitting down, sharing my thoughts, my opinions, and sharing, more importantly, my experience and self-discovery journey in hopes that it aids other people in their own journey and their own experiences, as it has done over the years with the amount of people on YouTube that I have connected with, that have shared their experiences with me, to also let me know that I'm not alone in my own experiences, and also vice versa, to let them know that they're not alone in their experiences. So I want to make this video to kind of kick off getting back really into making YouTube videos, because to be honest, when I created this YouTube channel, I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted this YouTube channel to be. But one thing I do know is that I was going through a very very large transformation within my own life at that time when I started this YouTube channel. Because during the time that I started this YouTube channel, I was about 24 years old, and I was taking care of a terminally ill parent. In fact, if you go back and watch some of my first videos where I'm sitting in that kitchen in the back room, my mother, who was going through her own transition at that time, I was taking care of her. And a lot of those videos, it took me about 10 to 15 tries to make them, because she was calling my name like every 15 minutes, needing something, as during that time, unfortunately, she was going through a lot of pain. And during the process of me experiencing that and going through that, YouTube became very therapeutic for me in many ways. And now that I'm back, for those that have been following my YouTube channel from my 14-month backpacking nomadic experience, and then coming back home 3 months before the pandemic happened, and just everything was in flux, and to where I am now, a little bit more stable in my life and trying to build a professional career. And in the midst of all that, I'm like, I really miss doing YouTube and sharing my experiences, and the kind of community that was coming from doing YouTube, which has really motivated me to want to get back into doing YouTube and creating content for the sake of creating content, not putting pressure on myself to make videos every week or whatever it may be, especially as I begin to gain more YouTube friends. And I was like, oh wow, like people are actually listening to some of the things that I have to say, and enjoying the experiences that I'm sharing on YouTube. And a large part of that motivation, as I kind of jump into what I've been doing since I've kind of taken a hiatus from YouTube, and then also kind of transitioning into the direction that I would like to take this YouTube channel in respects to all the things that I have currently going on now in my life. But to backtrack a little bit and to kind of kick off kind of what I've been doing is, for the most part, one of the motivational factors that inspired me to get back on YouTube was recently I was featured on a podcast. And in fact, I'm actually wearing the shirt to the podcast, my man Chapin's podcast, Misfits and Rejects. And pretty much it's a podcast. His premise for the podcast is to capture the life and lifestyles, the creative lifestyles that entrepreneurs, travel nomads, expats, this creative life that they build, this unique creative life that they build to fit them. And then also maybe a dash of spirituality in there, because actually the way that he found me, he lives all the way out in California, but the way that he found me was, lo and behold, through YouTube. So he kind of had his own kind of spiritual awakening, kundalini experience, if you will. And he saw my video on YouTube, which I can't remember exactly how. It's probably my most watched, most viewed video, with close to like 20,000 views. he saw that video and wanted to know more about my experience and where I was now after that experience. And he reached out to me on Instagram, and before I knew it, I was on his podcast. And it was such a great conversation that I was actually featured on there twice. So we touched on a lot of things between spiritual awakening, traveling, because also originally he found me through my spiritual content, but at the same time as he dug deeper into my content, he found that I was a traveler and I lived a nomadic lifestyle, and it fit perfectly with his brand. And the conversation that we had was just such it was just a phenomenal conversation that he decided to have me on there twice. So I will leave the link to both those podcasts in the description below for those that want to check it out. We touched on a little bit of spirituality, my own journey, my own process, and traveling. I mean, we touched on a lot of different things. And for those, if you like my content, I would highly recommend you to go and listen to those podcasts. But to go ahead and get you guys caught up to speed on my life, my experience, my self-discovery journey, as I transition into branching off some of the topics and things that I talk about in this video to make sequential videos on those topics. So this is kind of laying the foundation to, the direction that I want to take my YouTube channel. So to start off, as you guys know, I had my 14-month backpacking experience where I was traveling right after losing my mom. And that in itself was very therapeutic. It was amazing. I mean, I've talked in depth about my experiences, and there's a whole lot more that I could talk about in terms of that experience, especially the reverse culture shock and the reintegration of me coming back and home and trying to build a life here at home with some sort of consistency and stability. And a lot of people don't talk about that after they take those huge gaps where they're living abroad and living the nomadic lifestyle. It's definitely something to talk about. But as I came back, the pandemic started 3 months later after I moved back home. So the idea of me finding a job and starting my career was kind of put on pause because a lot of people just was not hiring. And so that prompted me, after my experience that I had through traveling, and starting to formulate how I want to spend the next 20-30 years of my life, because through that experience it came with a lot of internal wisdom and a lot of self-awareness in terms of what is really important to me and how I kind of want to live my life and pivot from the direction that it was headed in after I graduated college. And so during that time, during the year of 2020, I pretty much came back at the end of 2019 and going into 2020, and the pandemic happened. In a weird way, the pandemic was a silver lining for me because it gave me an opportunity to sit down and to be still and to really figure out the next steps of my life. Because after traveling and bouncing from city to city to city to city, it was a great opportunity for me to stop and think, okay, what do I want to do next? How am I going to make a living for myself, and so forth. And based on conversations that I had when I was traveling, I got introduced to a profession called life coaching. And over the year of 2020, I looked deeper into that, and I ended up hiring my own life coach as I'm trying to figure out my life. And I would say to anybody who, because all of us have parts in our lives that are not in order, and we can't do it all. So I would recommend finding people or hiring people that can help you figure out to get to where you're going. And so I decided to do that. I hired a life coach not only to help me kind of formulate what the next steps I want to take in my life, but to also to experience what life coaching was before I even considered looking into actually becoming one. And I actually enjoyed it, and I felt a lot of my skills and natural abilities were in alignment with the profession. And so over 2020, I became a certified professional coach for one of the top institutions out there, IPEC, known as the Institution for Professional Excellence in Coaching. And alongside my life experiences and the knowledge that I have of coaching people, and not only just my natural ability to communicate and build relationships with people, I felt like it was something great, and it's something that I'm pushing forward to in terms of making a career and becoming an entrepreneur. in doing that of becoming a coach. Some other things that happened in 2020, as I became a certified coach, many of the people in the program were like, hey, and for you guys that are my YouTube friends, you may also notice it as well too. He's like, hey man, you're a pretty good speaker. You have a natural ability to speak to people. You should also look into becoming a public speaker. And then before I knew it, something else, I was like, hey, that doesn't sound that bad either. I know a lot of people have fears of talking to people, and I never really had that. I mean, I get nervous. I mean, even when I started this YouTube channel talking to a camera, I'm a bit nervous, but I never really had that kind of nervousness that made me unable to take action to speak in front of people. So I said, also let me look in that too. So as we came into 2021, I had a coaching business with the EIN. I have a website and all those things that I'll also attach in the description below for those that are interested in checking that out. But I also decided to look into public speaking, and long before I knew it, I ended up bumping and rubbing shoulders virtually at that time with some of the top motivational, inspirational speakers and public speakers in the game, one of them being Les Brown. And I ended up taking his course, and through that, him and his business coaches took a liking to me, and I was asked to speak on his platform, on his Facebook page, through a program he was running called Power Voice, where I got to share my 7-minute story with his audience. I shared my story of me losing my mom, me traveling, and of course I wrapped it in a pretty inspiring bow. And that, I believe, is on my Instagram for those that want to check that speech out. And and things just started moving very quickly as soon as I jumped into this coaching, public speaking. I mean, within a few months, I was virtually rubbing shoulders with some of the top people in the industry, and it was happening very, very fast. But however, on another note, moving back home and trying to adjust and trying to become an independent adult, as you guys see, it's been working somewhat because I am actually no longer living with my dad. I'm living in an apartment that I pay for, filled with things that I bought, through me working a full-time job, which has also kind of been a little bit of a I guess you could say an adjustment to the lifestyle I was living beforehand, and I'll get into that. But and so on the other side of that, and all those good things that were happening to me, still kind of having difficulty finding a job because companies do not like to see gaps on your resume, especially at a young age. They're hoping for you to get out of college and start your career, and then also moving back home. And for my friends who maybe didn't have the same circumstances that I did, who started their careers out of college, and now I'm into my late 20s, and a lot of my peers are starting to see success, financial success, gaining titles and stuff in their career, and I'm just kind of feel like I'm not starting over. You're never really starting over, but starting and trying to formulate a career. And in that process, I took a company gave a chance on me. It's a full commission-based job, which is great if you want to make a lot of money pretty fast. And you have a natural ability to talk to people or sales. I would say get into a full commission-based job, but even that has its cons as well as its pros. But lately, it's been a lot of adjustment into taking the next steps in my life with knowing that my mother isn't around, which jumps into another topic that I would like to talk more about on my YouTube channel, which is grief. When I started traveling, as I mentioned on the podcast, Misfits and Rejects, that when I started traveling, I had to also come to the conclusion that I was grieving because I just lost my mom. But now that I'm back home, grief has taken on a new kind of form in my life, and in many ways, as I'm trying to move forward in my life, and knowing that things aren't the same as they were when my mother was around. And that has had its challenges, so much so that I went back to therapy. So I would recommend a lot of people, as a coach, to go see therapy to help resolve past issues in your life, to make you more functional in the present moment, so that you can live a life where you're in your optimal functionality, if you will, to where you can really maximize your potential, right? And so it just wasn't clicking for me working. My motivation began to deteriorate for coaching, for making YouTube videos, for all these things. And it was, putting me in a state of mind that where I wasn't always making the best decisions, or decisions that was aligning me to the life that I wanted to live. So I decided to go back to therapy, and it has been tremendously beneficial. And also, as I said, incorporating things in my life that is therapeutic, such as making YouTube videos. But as I said, I'll discuss more on the topic of grief, and what it's to lose a parent at a young age, especially our mothers, because on a spiritual sense, you come from your mother. You spend 7 to 9 months in your mother's womb. To lose your mom at any age is difficult, because it's like a piece of your existence that all of a sudden disappears in a physical sense. And for some people, even you could say in a spiritual sense, even though my mother walks with me every day and I feel her presence every day, but still doesn't make it easy going forward without her. But in the process of all of that, it definitely came back into where I feel like I'm in this kind of as I'm working 40 plus hours a week and getting back into what people would say a normal life after traveling the way I did, and realizing like, man, is this living? Is this really what it's about? Is this really what I want? And trying to formulate the next path in terms of figuring out a career and financing a financial career and making money and making a living, and also happiness and fulfillment, and trying to juggle all these things as a human that we all have to juggle with, for our mental well-being, for our own personal fulfillment, for our own personal engagement in terms of what it means to be alive. And all of this has really made me to reponder on what is my why. What is the purpose behind me doing a lot of the things that I do. I finished reading Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And that book has reignited the importance of understanding my why. And I really believe my motivation to doing a lot of the things that I enjoy doing is because I was coming back home being so focused on the financial aspect of living that I began to forget about my why and to help people. And my why began to formulate when I was taking care of my mom, which is to live the ultimate human experience, right? And part of that is being able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, in a way that helps other people, right? And coaching, I believe coaching and public speaking and YouTube and these things can be that avenue for me, right? As well as building a professional career, maybe in a corporate environment with a company or a position that kind of holds those same values to some of the entrepreneurial or things that I value in my life, right? I'm trying to figure all that out, as many of us are in our 20s and even going into our 30s for some people. And so I say all of that to say that I remember when I was in Bonnaroo, in the woods, of course, with some hippies, man, and we're drumming. We had a little drum circle going, and then we started talking all these like deep philosophical conversations about life. And one of the guys said something that always has stuck with me, that life is a balance of doing what you want to do versus doing what you have to do. And that has really stuck with me in terms of having the motivation to do the things that I feel like I have to do but aren't necessarily excited or motivated to do, as opposed to wanting to do the things that I want. But over the past couple of months, I've been revisiting that statement and realizing that I think there's another piece to it, which is to the point that you're living your life in such an alignment to who you are that the things that you want to do become the things that you have to do, right? Where the things that you want to do have to be done to feed your spirit, if that makes sense, right? To the point that if you want to be an artist, an actor, or if you have other dreams, if you want to own your own business or so forth, the urge, that dream, that passion that's in you, the urge of that becomes a necessity that you have to pursue it, or else, as Les Brown says, you commit a spiritual suicide. to where you're not going after the things that you want to do. And I'm really trying to transition my life into taking the leap of faith and doing the things that I want to do. And so I say that to say that through this YouTube channel, I don't know what it will become, but I do know that I'm trying to figure out a way to bring my coaching, what I want to do with this YouTube channel, all kind of into one. Now, I don't know if I'm gonna be up here advertising my coaching practice, maybe every once in a blue moon, but I definitely just want it to be built around just me speaking to my audience and sharing my experiences with you all. And also, I do believe that this YouTube channel will turn into a podcast eventually. I have a lot of people who've always told me to get into the podcasting space. I interviewed my grandfather on here, who is now 90. He just turned 90 last week. It's a phenomenal interview, a lot of wisdom in that interview. My grandpa being involved in civil rights, he's a pastor, still preaches. Very sharp-minded individual. I have gained a lot of wisdom from him over the years, especially after I lost my mother, and I highly recommend you guys to watch that interview. I'll link that in the description below as well too. But I also realized I really enjoy interviewing people. I really enjoy talking to people through traveling, the loads of different people I've met of all different ages and life circumstances. I really enjoy people, and I really enjoy bringing their experiences out and learning from them. That's the best way to learn, through human communication, something that has been dwindling over the pandemic, just raw interpersonal communication with one another. So I could definitely see this YouTube channel turning into a podcast where I'm interviewing and giving a little bit more of my insights to personal development and philosophy and so forth. So I just wanted to come up here to share all of this with you as I get back into doing YouTube and just sharing myself. That's one thing that over the past couple of years, as I'm trying to formulate and build a path for me now that I moved back home, understanding my mother's not coming back, understanding that I can't live the rest of my life just traveling, even though travel will always be a part of my life. I want to find something that I can dedicate my life to, right? And I will say this, and I'll end this video here, and that is, a couple months ago, I was watching a movie, and it was a movie called Into the Wild. And I was watching this movie just because I always seen clips of it in motivational speeches where they have these like B-roll or like movie clips behind like motivational speeches by Les Brown, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohan, Bob Proctor, rest in peace, who actually just passed away not too long ago. And I said, what is that movie? So I decided to look at the movie. And as I'm watching the movie, and as the movie goes on, it's about a 2-hour movie, a beautiful movie. I'm pretty sure many people in my audience have watched this movie, and if you haven't, I would watch it. And at the end of the movie, it's about this individual kind of living this nomadic lifestyle, renouncing society, if you will, trying to figure out what's the real meaning to his life, to life in general. And it ends up kind of being a beautiful tragedy, to where in the process of that he ends up losing his life. And before he actually transitioned, he writes in a journal that he has, and in the journal there's a quote that he writes that says, "Happiness isn't real unless shared." And when I seen that, it all clicked for me. And this is actually based on a true story of a guy, I believe his name is Chris McCandless. Real story. There's a book about him that later turned into this movie. But the way that this came full circle for me is when, if you watch like my very first YouTube videos, was actually me living in Peru, which inspired the traveling and all that. I was doing an exchange program, and towards the end of that exchange program, I was backpacking for the first time ever through the southern part of Peru and going into Bolivia. And when I was in Cusco, there was a minivan with a scruffy looking white dude on it, and it had a quote that said, "Happiness isn't real unless shared." And once I read that quote way back then when I was studying abroad back in 2016, that's what inspired me to want to do YouTube, to want to connect with people, to want to share my happiness, to want to share my experiences. And watching that movie a couple months ago, it brought me to tears because it reminded me, I think, what I'm here for and what I really want to do and what I want to dedicate my life to. And that's, for the most part, just as of now, sharing my experience with people in hopes to helping people and helping them along this journey. As one of my favorite spiritual teachers said, we are all just walking each other back home. So as I do my part to you, I hope you do your part to me, and subscribe, like, and comment on this video, and I look forward to this next phase of my YouTube journey. Peace.